Hey, what is going on guys? It's Modded Warfare here. Welcome back to another PS4 video. So I've got something quite special here to show you guys in this video. You can see this PS4 here is on the latest firmware version 10.70, and besides the wires sticking out at the front, it looks like just a normal PS4. Those wires are completely unrelated to anything, it's just the power button's not working. That's why those wires are sticking out there at the front. But if that wasn't there, it would just appear to be a normal PS4 on the latest firmware. As you can see, we have access to PSN. We are online on our PS4 right here. So obviously it is hiding something pretty special here. So if we go ahead and take a look at the front plate, if we remove the front plate to get access to the hard drive, you can actually see that we have a Teensy 2.0++ that's mounted to the back of the system. And this is basically permanently connected to the PS4, to the syscon and the NOR, which will allow us to revert our console. And this is just a kind of idea I had about how we could take the kind of revert method to the next step of actually having it as kind of a mod chip where we're able to revert on the fly at any point. And it actually works pretty well. We're not quite there yet. There's a couple of things where we still have to like solder a couple of wires here and there. Otherwise the console doesn't boot if you have all the wires connected. But that certainly could be improved and could be, you know, fixed in future with some kind of like custom chip. So yeah, definitely interesting. I think that's basically where Lightning Mods is heading with his E4 flasher. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of show you guys how this works and how quickly we can revert this console, because this console was in fact on 9.00 and then it was updated to 10.70. As you can see, we're on 10.70. So what we're going to do is revert this console down to 9.00. I'm going to show you how simple it is to do that here with this whole thing mounted up the way it is. So what we're going to do first of all here is I do need to reattach 3 wires because those wires had to be disconnected in order for the console to boot. So by resoldering those wires, it's just the power wire and a couple of other wires here that need to be resoldered. And once that's done, we are pretty much good. Obviously, we need to unplug the power cable from the console as well. And then we can connect up a USB cable. This USB cable will connect to our computer and it will allow us to read and write to the console's NOR flash and syscon flash. Now, obviously, I have got a backup of the syscon and the NOR flash on my computer from when I was on 9.00, which will make this process a lot faster. So all we need to do here is basically head on over to our computer and we can use the SPI Way application, which that's currently what's loaded onto the Teensy. And it will allow us to, first of all, we can ping the chip to get the chip's information to make sure that's actually wired up correctly and it's detecting the NOR flash. And as you can see, it is in fact detecting it correctly. So then we can tell it to write our backup onto the chip. We do this by using the command vrite, which is verify write. So it will actually verify each block as it's writing it to make sure that it actually programs the chip properly. There's not any errors. So we're going to go ahead and tell it to do that. And we're going to give it the file path to my backup S-flash file from my 9.00 system from when it was on 9.00. And we'll go ahead and write that onto the chip. Now this does take quite a while because it's quite slow, the Teensy 2.0++ at actually writing the NOR flash, but we'll go ahead and skip through that here. And as you can see, it is now done. So once that's been written to successfully, the beauty of this whole setup using this one chip to be able to do the NOR flash and the syscon is the fact that all we need to do to now write to the syscon here is, without changing anything on the hardware side, we can simply just reprogram the Teensy. All we have to do is open up the teensy.exe to program it. We press the button on the Teensy to enter programmer mode. And then we're just going to drag the firmware file for the Teensy for the syscon writer, and we're going to drag that into the programmer, tell it to program it, and then reboot the Teensy after it's been programmed. And that's it. We're now ready to write to our syscon chip. So from there, all we need to do is open up the syscon flasher by Abcarino and CGYCNQ. So all we need to do is open that up, and then we're going to select the option to write the full syscon dump. I guess we could maybe just do SMVS and MVS block. Maybe that would work. Not entirely sure because we're not doing the slot switch method in this case. So all we're going to do here is just write the full syscon dump, and we're going to browse for my backup syscon from when it was on 9.00. I'm going to select that option. And then I'm just going to tell it to go ahead and write the syscon, tell it to start, and it's going to write that backup onto our syscon chip. And that's basically it. All we have to do is wait for that to complete, which again only takes about a minute or two. And once that's done, we are all set. So at that point, we can just go ahead and get rid of those wires again. We'll desolder those 3 wires that we soldered in order to write the syscon and NOR chip. And once that's done, we can tuck those out of the way. And now we are all set. We can just plug in the console and boot it up here. And then once it actually boots up, you can see that we do in fact get a message here that says you need to reinstall the system software for version 9.00, not 10.70, 9.00, in order to get the system booted back up. And that's because the hard drive obviously has the files for 10.70 on it, not 9.00. So that's why we're getting that message. This can obviously be fixed by just simply getting a recovery firmware for 9.00, putting that on a USB drive, plugging it in and letting it do the update. That will reinstall the hard drive files to get the system booted back up again. The only issue with that though is that we will lose all the data on the hard drive, I believe, from 10.70. So obviously if I was doing things on 10.70, like playing games, and I had save files and stuff that I didn't want to lose, then another method here is that I can just use 2 hard drives. So I've got a second hard drive here from when I was on 9.00. I just took that hard drive out when I was on 9.00 and then put another hard drive in and used that one to update to 10.70. So this hard drive is still on 9.00. So all I have to do here is turn off the console and then remove the hard drive from 10.70 and then replace it with the hard drive from 9.00. And with that, we should be all set. So all we need to do here is turn the console back on. And once again, finally, we do in fact have the console booted up here into the OS. And then we should be good. You can see we're booted back up here, and we do in fact have the homebrew apps showing up as well. We've got all of our homebrew, and if we head into the system settings, system information, you can see we are on version 9.00. We have successfully reverted this console back down to 9.00, and that only really took about 10 minutes to actually do. So pretty handy setup here. We'll go ahead and run the jailbreak now as well, just to show that that works. But yeah, this is a pretty cool setup. Obviously, this is something that is kind of like the ideal setup that we can do with the revert method at the moment. It's still not really recommended because, you know, it's not recommended to have the Teensy wired up to the console while you're booting it. This could potentially cause some issues, but we could certainly see some kind of mod chip or maybe the E4 flasher being able to do this in future, where it can be wired up safely to the console completely without having to remove any wires when you're actually trying to boot, and have it work perfectly and allow you to revert the system at any point. That is the ultimate goal. Now, the reason I was able to do this, if you're wondering, if you're curious, basically I'm using alternate points that are on the back of the motherboard to read and write to the NOR flash and to the syscon chip, which basically means that I'm not wiring anything up to the kind of sensitive components around the chip that are kind of easy to come off, or you know, things like little resistors that are around the chip. I'm not doing that. I'm soldering everything to alternative points on the back of the board, which are, you know, far away from anything else, so it's not really going to cause any problems. And the reason I'm able to read and write to the syscon is because the syscon's in debug mode. You do have to lift pin 15 of the syscon chip and solder a wire to it in order to boot it into debug mode. But once you have it in debug mode, you can then just use the alternative points on the back of the board to read and write to the syscon without having to have that pin lifted, which is handy. Plus, even when you update your system software on the console, it does not reset the syscon chip out of debug mode. It stays in debug mode even after firmware updates, so you don't have to worry about that either. And because we're using the Teensy 2.0++, which, you know, allows you to read and write to the NOR flash with the SPI way firmware, plus you also have the syscon writer firmware that works on Teensy 2.0++ as well, we can use that one device to read and write to both chips. So that's basically how it's all done. So anyway, obviously I'm going to do a full tutorial of this coming soon, showing you the whole slot switching method, where you don't have to back up your firmware first and you can revert to your previously installed firmware. And once you do that, you'll then have a backup that you can use to restore to that firmware at any point in future. And you can also wire it up permanently like I've done if you want to try it that way, or you can just do it once and remove the wires and the chip once it's all done. So that's up to you, but we'll have a tutorial coming out for that fairly soon. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this video or found the information useful. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe, and I'll hopefully see you guys in the next one.